Can you grow potatoes in only leaves? Today, I'm going to show you what happens when you grow potatoes in only leaves with no soil. Let's go! 2 years ago, I grew potatoes in this spot right here. I just dropped down this 1 foot by 8 foot raised bed that I built out of scrap 2x10s, placed my potatoes on the soil, then covered them with soil and let them grow. By the end of the season, I had my biggest potato harvest ever, and it got me thinking, what if I do the same exact thing, but instead of using soil, I use free recycled leaves? So that's what I did last year. I know growing potatoes in straw is common, but I can't really get straw around here. I can get some hay, but it has seeds in it, so I don't want to grow in that. Leaves are free and readily accessible. Last spring, in this same spot, I started with this bed empty, then grabbed my potatoes to plant. In this first section, I'm planting German Butterball seed potatoes. You can see they look really nice and the seed potatoes look healthy. I went by and laid 6 potatoes on the surface of the soil, 6 inches apart. The potato plants will sprout from the eyes and grow upwards, and the potatoes will form along the roots. So it's not necessary for me to bury this potato when planting. Plus, if I grow it like this, then it can be grown in only leaves. Next, I grabbed some Desiree potatoes. These are red potatoes and were already sprouted and growing. I laid 10 of these potatoes on the surface of the soil as well, 6 inches apart, just like this. Here are all the potatoes in the bed, perfect spacing. I'm hoping for a good future harvest. Instead of just covering the potatoes with soil, I decided to switch it up and cover them with leaves. I collected the leaves that people bagged last fall. You can see some of them are all matted together, and the majority of the leaves are massive. I couldn't just use the whole leaves as they were, or they would have stayed in that mat form. And even if I separated them and then covered my potatoes with those whole leaves, then they would have matted up again. That could have suffocated my potatoes out and also prevented drainage. What I did was I grabbed my lawnmower and went over them with the bag attached. This diced up the leaves and caught them at the same time. Here is what they look like after going through the mower. You can see they will be a lot better to grow in, and they won't all just mat together now. Next, I grabbed my leaves and covered my first half of potatoes with about 5 inches of diced leaves. Here is the first half covered and looking good. Then I did the same thing with the second half until I got to the end. Right here, you can see the whole bed planted with potatoes and covered with 5 inches of diced leaves. After adding the leaves, I went by and dusted some fertilizer on top of the leaves. Then I mixed the fertilizer into the top few inches of the leaves. The reason I added some fertilizer was because I wanted to grow these potatoes the same exact way I grew potatoes the year before in soil. This way we could have a good comparison of how well potatoes grow in soil compared to in leaves. Then I went by and watered everything in to encourage my potatoes to start sprouting. On the same day, I grabbed a white 5-gallon bucket, one that has a food safe stamp on it, and drilled some holes in the bottom for drainage. Then I filled the bottom of the bucket with about 5 or 6 inches of leaves, wet the leaves down, and mixed them up a bit to make sure they were all saturated. Next, I grabbed some blue gold potatoes, they look healthy too, and placed 3 of them on the leaves. I covered them with 5 inches of leaves, added in some fertilizer, mixed it in a bit, then watered the whole thing in. I figured it was a good idea to plant some potatoes in containers with only leaves, because on that same day, I planted potatoes in containers with soil. This way there's 2 different versions to compare of how potatoes grow in leaves versus soil. 10 days later, the potatoes were sprouting. You can see them pushing up through the leaves here. And there are more sprouting over here too. The potatoes in buckets were just starting to poke through the leaves as well. 12 days later, the plants were all up and were looking really healthy. I was actually surprised how well they were growing. The foliage was a nice dark green color, which was a good sign. At this point, they were already getting tall though, as you can see here, and we're ready for me to start hilling them. We hill potatoes as they grow for a few reasons. The first one is to increase the overall yield because more tubers can form. The second reason is to block out the sunlight from hitting developing tubers. If they get too much sun, they could turn green and go toxic. And another thing is, as we hill the potatoes, it helps kind of like strengthen them and keep them upright and prevent them from flopping over. To do this, I grabbed some more diced leaves and began placing it around the base of my potatoes. I gently move the potato out of the way, add my mulch in the front side, then do the same thing on the back side until it's all hilled. Here's the bed all finished being hilled. Next, I went by and added some additional fertilizer around the plants. I did this because I also added fertilizer when hilling my plants grown in soil the year before. Then I just watered the whole section in, and here's what it looks like, all finished, watered in and leaves to the top. 2 weeks later, the plants showed some really nice growth, and they still had a beautiful color to them. One thing I noticed was the plants were tall, but a little weaker and more spindly than the ones I grew the previous year in soil. I think it's because when hilling with the leaves, they didn't really support the stalks as much as when I actually hilled with the soil. The prices of our metal raised beds were supposed to increase on April 18th, but a lot of you reached out and asked if we can give you just a few more days. We heard you, and now you can still grab your metal raised beds at a discount at teamgrow.us until April 21st. Grab a raised bed today to lock in your savings. At this point, some of the plants were starting to flower, which means the first tubers are forming, which is always exciting to see. Some plants were looking good, just a bit flopped over. Even in the heat of summer, the leaves remained really damp and moist. The potatoes that were growing in a bucket with only leaves were looking good as well. Nice growth, but the one in the soil was looking much better, stronger and larger. The plants were in cruise control, so I just let them do their thing. I came by on hot days to give them some water when necessary. The tubers were forming under the leaves, and I was just waiting in anticipation. 20 days later, and 59 days after planting, I came out to check on the potato plants. You can see they grew a bunch, but were really flopping over. They weren't standing strong like the potato plants that I grew in soil. They kind of were just like laying on the bed and on the ground a little bit. But I still had high hopes for a good harvest because there was a lot of foliage and the plants still looked healthy. Let's jump into some live updates from last year and a live harvest. It's August 4th today. It's been 77 days since I placed the potatoes on the ground and covered them with leaves. The potatoes are still growing really well. If you notice, come in here, it's only leaves down here. The leaves really sank a good amount. I could have potentially put even more leaves in here, but that's okay. The plants are still thriving, growing really well, and I won't come out and harvest these till the leaves have essentially all died back. I cannot wait to see what kind of harvest we've got from these potatoes, and I'm really happy because I planted potatoes the same way last year, but with soil, so it's going to be fun to be able to compare the two. Growing potatoes without soil, just in leaves, versus growing potatoes in soil, in this same exact location. So the potatoes have kind of flopped over a little bit, but that's okay. They're still growing really well. You can see all the new growth on here. So in not too long, we'll be able to, when these potatoes die back, we'll be able to like pull all of them out and see what kind of harvest we can get when we grow potatoes without even using soil. Let's do a quick update on the potatoes that I planted and grew in only leaves. These potatoes at this end look like they're finishing up. They're about ready to harvest. These ones over here are not finished yet. So we're just gonna allow these ones to all finish, this green to die back more so the potatoes can continue to get larger and finish. Then we'll come by and harvest all these and see what the harvest looks like. Here are a few potato plants that I'm growing. Each one I planted in a different way. So the one over here, I planted this my standard way of growing potatoes in buckets. I just planted it in soil and then kept adding more soil until we got to the top and added some mulch, some diced leaf mulch. Over here, I planted this potato plant only in leaves. So I put leaves at the bottom, put some potatoes down, and then filled it up with leaves. The whole thing is leaves. There's no soil in here. You'll notice this plant is a little sadder looking. It's a little smaller, not as big and healthy as this one over here. This one looks like it's dying, but that's because the potatoes are finishing. So after the rest of these leaves all die back, I'll pull this out and see how many potatoes we get out of this one. And then this one looks like it needs still just a little bit more time. And then we'll harvest this one and see how many potatoes we can get out of a spot where we don't use any soil, just leaves to grow potatoes. The day has finally come to harvest the potatoes, the ones we planted in only leaves. It's been 140 days since we planted them out. I planted these on May the 19th. Over here, we planted the Desiree potato on this side. It's a late season potato. It usually takes about 125 to 140 days till it's ready. So we're right at that mark. Over here, we planted the German Butterball, another late variety. This one takes about 95 to 135 days. So it's exciting. We waited a long time to see how this went. Planting them in only leaves. Overall, I don't have a huge level of expectations. Even though the plants grew really well and were really healthy, I don't think we're gonna grab the biggest harvest from here. We'll see though. Last year I did the same exact thing, but I used soil. So it's going to be good to be able to compare the two different methods, one with another. So it's been a while since we actually came out here to check on some of the stuff. Since then, we just stayed on top of watering and let the plants kind of continue to grow. And now you can see they're all dying off. So it should be the ideal time to come out here and harvest some potatoes. Let's start with a few of the German Butterball, see what we got. Let's just come down here, yank some of them out. A few small potatoes. Not too bad, but much smaller than the potatoes we grew in just soil. Let's dig in here and see if we can find some more. Okay, okay. Some little potatoes. Nothing huge yet. That looks like all of them right there. See what we got down here. Another plant. See, small potatoes still. Yeah, not anything too impressive just yet. Definitely smaller potatoes. That must have been, yeah, that one's a little dirty, but that's okay. Definitely smaller potatoes. You can see the leaves broke down a lot. Had the depth down there, it's not that deep. And I could have come by and added a whole nother layer of leaves, but I kind of wanted to plant these the same way I did the soil ones, where I planted them, covered them with soil, then came out once and topped them with mulch. These ones, I planted them with leaves and then came by and added more leaves. The leaves just broke down over time. It makes sense to me though, that these ones are a little smaller. So we saw the German Butterballs. After this, I'll go by and harvest all of them and show you what we got at the end. Let's check out the Desiree potatoes over here. So this is a purple variety of potatoes. One thing I noticed is like some of the critters like to dig in through the leaves. They didn't really do that with the soil. Let's see what we got in here. Oh man, that's sad. These are some tiny potatoes. I feel like there's a couple bigger ones in here. That's not too bad, but still small and like scabby. Definitely scabby. Look at that. It's for the size of these plants, I'm surprised how small the potatoes are. And you guys noticed how actually we got some good ones in here. Still though, kind of misshaped. Not the most appetizing looking potatoes. The plant's really flopped over, so not having that soil, that's the biggest one so far. But look how ugly it is. It's got, yeah, this is not great. And we've got deeper soil over here. Yeah, look at all of them are just a little bit ugly. They should be like a nice purple, these potatoes. I gotta say, actually we got more down here. So far overall, oh, we got some good ones in here. Let's see. Ooh, here we go, a little better. Not that impressed though. Not the cleanest looking potatoes. I used the same amount of fertilizer as when I planted the ones last year, and they definitely did better when I had deeper of leaves, as you can see here, but still a lot of marks in them and stuff. I wasn't getting these issues when I planted the potatoes in soil. A little more in here. So the harvest isn't going to be terrible, but it's for sure an uglier harvest. That's what happens, I guess, when you grow them just in leaves though. I'm going to go by, I'm going to harvest the rest of these and see what we got, and then we'll kind of come back for an overall idea of whether it's something I'd do again and if I think it's worth it. Overall, just from the start, I mean, you guys could see this is not as impressive as the harvest I did last year. Not at all. That's okay though. It's a fun experiment and we'll get the rest of these all harvested. Grab this last potato and we'll take a look at the final harvest. As you can see, a lot of small potatoes, and a lot of them are actually really ugly. Compared to the growing it in soil, I mean, I don't think there even is a comparison. This harvest, I didn't think it was gonna be great, but it's a little more of a letdown than I thought. There's a decent amount of potatoes, but so many of them are damaged. Like, look at this thing. And I mean, this has gotta be one of the ugliest potatoes I've ever seen. Look at that stuff. It just looks horrible. So some of the German butterballs look better. Like, they have like a better color to them, not as many like scabs. They don't look like they're as bad. So I'm gonna cut into one of each, just because I cut into the other ones last year, so we can kind of see a comparison. So we'll take like one that looks okay. This one's got a bunch of bumps on it, but I think it would look okay on the inside. Let's slice it. Looks nice on the inside. Doesn't look as nice as the ones from last year, but it doesn't look bad. We could definitely eat this one, so it'll be good food. Let's try some of the Desiree ones. I'm just amazed at how the Desiree doesn't have that purple color to it. So they're pretty ugly. Let's try this one. Let's get a slice into it. I'm not expecting to see anything special. It actually looks way better than I thought. The color is nice on that one. So these look like they're still gonna be some good eating. We'll definitely still wash all these off, keep the best ones that we can, and make sure we eat them and use them. Overall though, not as big as a harvest as I was actually expecting. You're looking at the final harvest of the Desiree potatoes right here. Not very impressive. And the final harvest of the German butterball potatoes. Not anything to write home about. I'm gonna harvest these potatoes that I grew in a container. They look like they're ripe and ready. So let's flip this baby over and see what's hidden underneath the soil inside of this bucket right here. We're just gonna flip it over. See what we got. Hopefully we got something nice. I've got potatoes planted in other locations, but first let's see what we got in the bucket. Peel this away. Looks like some red potatoes. Oh yeah, already seeing some nice ones. Look at this. Not bad. Grab some more of these. Oh, I must have planted two different varieties because we've got white and red ones. Two different colors of potatoes from one bucket. Potatoes are so much fun just digging through. You never know what you're gonna find. As long as your plants are big and healthy though, it's likely you're gonna get some nice harvest from them. So check that out. Not a bad harvest from just a bucket. So you don't need a lot of space to grow a lot of food in your backyard. Even if you wanna just grow in containers, you can get some nice harvests. Beautiful potatoes right there. I didn't even know that I planted two different varieties. I must have forgot. We've got Tuck working hard out here. It's September the 2nd. Let's check out the results of the potatoes that we grew in only leaves in a bucket. I don't think this one is going to be as high yielding as the one in soil because the plants were just much smaller. Not having the support of soil seems like it makes a pretty big difference. We'll see though. Let's flip it over. You never know what we're gonna end up with. I'm pretty excited to see the results. Let's see what we got. Well, we got some worms in here for sure. Look at that. And you can see the roots have really started to like penetrate all the leaves. It almost like turned it into like a kind of soil. It doesn't feel very heavy though, so I'm not super optimistic. Look, the roots have really just worked their way through. I'm seeing some small potatoes. Let's see, tiny little ones. And a good amount of scabs on them. So this, look at that. These are not the prettiest potatoes I've ever seen. Here's the biggest one, I think, and kind of sad looking, to be honest. Let's see what else we have in here. Let me see here. Yeah, these are not the prettiest looking potatoes I've ever seen. And I put fertilizer in these plants just like the other ones, but it seems like just the structure of the soil and I guess just too many leaves, potentially not enough air. I meant too much, like, yeah, the leaves are maybe not allowing for enough air or something, but this is not the results that I was hoping for. I would say that this one is pretty obvious and pretty clear that growing potatoes in only leaves is not going to be as beneficial as growing potatoes in soil. I think if I filled the bottom of my bucket with soil and then just used some soil on top of the potatoes, it would have been a lot better, and then just hilled up with leaves, that works. But to me, after looking at something like this, it's really feeling that growing potatoes in only leaves is not the best method or technique. Even growing in like maybe native soil, even if it was super dense, would be better than this, because these are not the results that we were hoping for. I mean, not only do these potatoes not only are they small and the yield is bad, these are some of the ugliest looking potatoes I think I've ever grown. I want to talk about why I think the potatoes and leaves did so poorly and what I think I could have done differently. While I do that, I'll show you how ugly some of those potatoes were that I harvested. I think the first problem was that the leaves sank down too much, and I should have gone out there about like 2 or 3 more times to add more leaves. This could have helped support the plants more and also would have given more room for additional tubers to form. I wanted to keep the comparison fair and do the same thing with both styles of growing. When I grew them in the soil, I only hilled up 1 time. So when I grew them in leaves, I only wanted to hill up 1 time. But after doing it, I think we would have had a lot better test and comparison if I hilled more with leaves for the ones that I grew in only leaves. Also, I don't think the constant soggy environment of the leaves was good for the potatoes. I noticed a lot of insect life in there, more than I would find in my soil. They remain wet and damp and soggy for so long. I don't think it ended up being a good thing. There might just not have been enough air. Another thing is, I don't think the potatoes potentially had enough nutrition. When I mixed the fertilizer in and I watered, I almost feel like the fertilizer just got wet and went down into the ground, and then the potatoes didn't really have access to that. When I grew in soil and mixed the fertilizer in, that fertilizer stayed in the soil and it allowed the plant's roots to have better access to it. Ultimately, I just think that leaves are not as good of a growing medium for potatoes as soil, obviously, or even as something like straw. I wouldn't consider this a failure though, because I learned a lot from it. And what do you guys think? Should I try it again? Should I try to grow potatoes and leaves this year, but just tweak a few things to see if I can get better results? Because it would be really nice if we can grow delicious potatoes in free, easily accessible leaves. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something out of it. These are some of my favorite videos to make because I find them to be very fun. All these kinds of experiments, even if they don't go perfectly, I always learn something from it. I always pick up a piece of nugget or information that I can use somewhere else in the garden that helps my overall harvest. So I find them to be just a blast. These videos take usually like a whole season or a whole year to do. So through the process of it, it's fun, like not knowing what's going to happen, and just the anticipation of it makes it just a joy to do. Let me know down in the comments if you like these kinds of videos and if there's any other cool experimental gardening videos that you want me to do, because now's a perfect time to get those started. Overall, I had a blast, and even if the harvest wasn't great, that's okay. It was still a joy to do it. It was a lot of fun. Plus, I planted potatoes in a bunch of different sections, so don't worry, we were still eating good potatoes all through the winter. I wanted to send a thank you to one of our new channel members, Stacy Brown. Thanks for being a part of Team Grow. Thanks for having your hand in everything we're doing out here. The sun has finally come out. The cherry tree is in full bloom. I'll give you guys a clip of that. It's incredible. It's beautiful. The bees are coming. They're pollinating. So soon we'll be eating fresh cherries. There's nothing like getting that fresh organic fruit right from the garden. I want to mention that now is also a perfect time to grab some of the highest quality garden gear over at teamgrow.us. Get some raised beds, get all different kinds of stuff to grow, grab some fertilizer to make sure you have your best garden season ever this year, so you can be eating those fresh, delicious harvests. I mean, there's truly nothing like it. It's been just a really fun spring so far, and it's shaping up to be an incredible summer. This garden is set up. I'm transplanting things into the ground today, my brassicas, my lettuces, all different kinds of stuff like that. The spinach are up looking great. The radishes, all things are coming together, and that the new property, that's all coming together too. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to bring you guys along for that. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything that's going on, and you can get those valuable pieces of information that can take your garden to the next level. We'll catch you guys on another one real soon. We out.